and welcome back to my channel. My name is Erin, and today I'm going to be talking about the book Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I picked this up in February because it was the Shelf Space Book Club for February, and I had heard glowing things about it so far. So I decided to pick it up, though I do tend to err on the side of completed series, and this is the first in a series and the only one out. I decided to give it a go, and I'm really glad I decided to pick it up now instead of waiting because it was incredible. This was so good. This is likely going to end up on my top 10 fantasies of the year list, and it's probably going to be my favorite of the month, even though it's still early in the month when filming this. So this book is an adult fantasy set in a world inspired by the pre-Columbian Americas, where we follow three main storylines with kind of a secondary storyline where we have Narampa, who is the sun priest of the religious city Tova, and she is an idealist who's trying to use her position to kind of better the city around her, but she is getting some pushback from the other priests because she's not totally accepted, as she was a controversial pick to become sun priest to start with, so we get some political intrigue from her storyline. We follow Ziala, who is an exiled Teak woman who is captaining a ship who gets hired to take this mysterious man from the merchant city of Kuokala up the ocean, up the coast to Tova before they have a deadline to get there. And so then we follow Serapio, who is the man on the ship that is being taken to Tova, who has his life's purpose was to be a vessel for the crow god. This was kind of imparted onto him by his mother. He didn't really have a choice in this destiny. It's just kind of who he is and what he was made to be. And so he is traveling to Tova to kind of fulfill this prophecy and for his people, or become a weapon. We'll see. And so all of their stories will intersect at the end of this book in the event called the Convergence, which is the winter solstice, and this year it is happening on the same day as a solar eclipse. And so in Tova there will be a bunch of celebrations, and that's kind of the day the crow god is supposed to use the vessel of Serapio to return. And so he's trying to get there for this to happen and whatever the aftermath will be. So first off, let me talk about the world building in this book, because it was rich and magical, and it was infused with mythologies, and it was very well done. She dropped kind of tidbits about the world within the story so masterfully, and it never at once to me felt like you were just reading an info dump. I think the amount of information that was shared and like in what areas of the world was also perfect. This book is only about 450 pages. It's not super long for a high fantasy, and so she really didn't have the time to give you every single piece of information about all the world. And so she kind of focused on kind of the main spots that the story takes place in, but she still dropped enough info about the other places that are mentioned in this world that it never felt like it was an underdeveloped world. It was clear she had a fully developed world and just hadn't revealed all of it yet. And so I thought that was well done. You got a little bit of a taste from some of these other cultures that leave you excited to learn more about them in the next book. And so yeah, I really love this world. Very excited to get back to it whenever the second book comes out. Next, I'm going to talk about the story and the pacing. I thought this story was totally engrossing. I was hooked immediately. I was hooked throughout the entire book. I did not think there was a single slow chapter in this book. I think it was paced really well. Every chapter tells you how long it is until the convergence, as well as like a little epigraph. And I think the kind of the countdown mechanic of these chapter headings helped really well with the pacing, because you kind of knew exactly when you're going to get to the convergence. There was no like, oh, how are we not there yet? It's like, well, you know exactly when it's going to happen. So I don't know. I really liked how that was done. I liked all the point of views stories equally, which is definitely a feat. I feel like even if I enjoy all the point of views, I usually have a favorite, and I don't know if I did have a favorite. I kind of just loved all of them. And so story-wise, I loved it. I loved how there was some political intrigue, how some of it was kind of a swashbuckling adventure on the seas, and I really like the religious and the kind of the cult aspects. I think those are very interesting to me when they're included in stories. And then so I think another winning part of this book is the characters. I Loved all the main characters. They all found a way into my heart very easily. First we have Narimpa, who is the sun priest. She is an idealist, very ambitious character who started her life in the slums and managed to work her way up to the highest position she could get to in Tova. Not everyone is a fan of her because of that. They don't think she deserves to be where she is, and so that is what spurs a lot of the kind of plotting and scheming in her story, which I, again, quite enjoyed. The end of her story kind of started digging more into her backstory more, and it really intrigued me, and I'm very excited to see more of her in the next one. Next, we have Ziala, who is the Teak sea captain, and so the Teaks are kind of like a siren mermaid inspired character, and so she got exiled from her homeland, which is also not really accepted here in these, that where she is in this book either. A lot of people are afraid of Teaks. They have this power, the singing power, that can calm storms and like control the water, and so people are kind of afraid of them. And so she's not totally accepted, but she has been able to kind of make her way as a captain because her singing makes her an asset as a ship captain. So it's a very tenuous balance she walks here. And so in this story, she's definitely fighting against that prejudice from her ship, and where kind of any wrong turn could turn them all against her. The last character, Serapio, he was a very interesting character because his whole life existed because of his mother's desire to bring the old crow god back to avenge the carrion crow. She's part of the kind of crow cult, and so that's kind of the whole reason he was born. And so when he's a kid, she kind of forces this role and kind of does this ceremony to make him into the vessel that will then later welcome the god into him. So that's kind of his whole life. His mom dies in like the first chapter, so sorry if that was too much of a spoiler. And his dad kind of hates him after that. And so he's not accepted at his home either. And so now that he's on the ship traveling to Tova, people are kind of wary of him because he's kind of scary looking. Like his eyes are sewed shut and he's blind, and he has a lot of carved markings on him, like carved into his skin. And he's all dressed in black. He's a little freaky, and so people aren't really welcoming of him either. But however, during this book, despite him kind of his whole point of his life being him losing all of his autonomy, we see bits of humanity seep through him in his behaviors and how he kind of perceives what's happening around him. And a large part of that is his relationship and connection with Ziala, which I think was one of the best parts of the book. I loved the scenes of them interacting together. They kind of found comfort in each other as two outcasts, and so they're used to people not really liking them, and they are able to be relaxed around each other. It's like Ziala isn't afraid of him and he's not afraid of her, and so they have a lot of moments on the ship where they're just kind of hang out, and or she tells him like bedtime stories from her culture, and it's really sweet. I think one quote I highlighted in here that really kind of highlights this isolation that he felt was, "But none of it replaced what he ached for most, the company of people." And the fact that he can find that company with Ziala was just so touching. And another quote that kind of just highlights this connection they had together was, "He grinned a little wider, and despite her dire circumstances, she felt something untwist inside her. He doesn't judge me," she thought, as the loosening in her chest manifested in tears. She pressed the meat of her palms to her eyes. She didn't realize the sense of relief that would come with simply being accepted. It's just so heartwarming that they were just able to find comfort in another outcast. It got me so much. We also have a fourth point of view character that kind of is introduced a little later in the book named Okoa, who is a member of the Carrion Crow clan. He is kind of off at this military academy at the beginning of his story, and then he is kind of brought back home by some of the events in the book. So I don't feel like I had as much time to get to know him, but I am very intrigued by his storyline as well. He's kind of like one of the noble family of the Crow family because his mom is the matron, and so he's kind of getting pulled between being part of the noble family and the cultists who kind of want them to join his side. And I think that will be interesting to see unfold as well in the next one. Also, in addition to the characters, there was also very well done queer representation in this book. It was every time it was brought up, there was a non-binary character that used non-binary pronouns, which was a little startling to read at first because I just really never read anything that used the Z, like XE, Zer, before. Like, I'd heard of those pronouns before, but I'd never actually read anything that used them. So that was different, but there was also bi rep. So all of this representation, I think, was really well done because it was kind of just included with no fanfare, which is great to read about. If that's also something that you're looking for in a fantasy book, this one has it. It kind of just has everything, guys, because it's freaking amazing. So my only critique of this book is I do not know when the second one's coming out, and I need it now, immediately in my hand. So anyways, definitely recommend this, and I hope everyone who watches this video picks it up. So those are my thoughts on Black Sun, and I will see you next time.